The Royal Mail can trace its history back to 1516, when Henry VIII established a Master of the Posts. This enabled the king and court to move messages and information around the country. During the reign of Queen Elizabeth I, there was a system of post roads. The messengers or postboys either went by foot or on horseback. A huge number of horses was involved in this operation, as each stage was only about 10 miles, after which a fresh horse was used. In most cases, the horses were kept at inns or hostelries. This, however, was nothing new. Some 2,000 years earlier, in Persia, during the reigns of Cyrus the Great and then Darius the Great, the chaper khaneh was created as a royal method of communication throughout the empire. Each chaper khaneh was a station mainly located along the Royal Road, a 2,500 kilometre ancient highway which stretched from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean, connecting most of the major cities of the empire. There was also a well-documented postal service in Rome, organised at the time of Augustus Caesar. It was called the Cursus Publicus. By the time of Diocletian, a parallel service was established which had two-wheel carts pulled by oxen. This service was reserved for government correspondence, but another service for citizens was added later. When James VI of Scotland became James I of England, at the Union of the Crowns in 1603, he moved his court to London. One of his first acts in London was to establish a royal postal service between London and Edinburgh in an attempt to retain control over the Scottish Privy Council, although he hardly ever went back to Scotland after coming to London. The Royal Mail Service was first made available to the public by Charles I in July 1635. With postage being paid by the recipient and not by the sender. This was a monopoly which was run by a man called Thomas Witherings. It's worth noting that the routes specified that the towns that would be served by this post were the same towns on the Elizabethan post road maps. When the public service was first introduced in 1635, letters were carried between posts by mounted postboys and delivered to the local postmaster. The postmaster would then take out the letters for his area and hand the rest to another postboy to carry them on to the next post. This was a slow process, and the postboys were an easy target for robbers, but the system remained unchanged for almost 150 years. This is Ralph Allen. He lived in Bath and was notable for his reforms to the British postal system. He realised that the postboys were delivering items of mail along their route without them being declared, and that this was lost profit. He introduced a signed-for system that prevented the malpractice. He also improved efficiency by not requiring all mail to go via London. In 1754, a company in Manchester began a new service called the Flying Coach, which it claimed would, barring accidents, travel from Manchester to London in just 4.5 days. A similar service began from Liverpool 3 years later, using coaches with new steel spring suspension. These coaches reached the great speed of 8 miles per hour and completed the journey to London in just 3 days. And while flying machines took 3 days to get from London to Bath, a modern driver can make it in 2 hours. This is John Palmer. He also came from Bath and was the owner of the old Orchard Street Theatre in Bath. That building is still there, although it is now a Masonic hall. Because Palmer made such use of stagecoach services between the cities in the course of his business, and noted it was far more efficient than the delivery system of the mail that was then in operation, he was able to travel from Bath to London in a single day, while mail took 3 days. It occurred to him that this coach service could be developed into a national mail delivery service. So in 1782 he suggested to the post office that they take up the idea. The officials believed that the existing system could not be improved, but eventually the Chancellor of the Exchequer, who was William Pitt, allowed him to carry out an experimental run between Bristol and London. Under the old system, the journey had taken up to 38 hours. But the coach, funded by Palmer, left Bristol on the 2nd of August 1784 and arrived in London just 16 hours later. Impressed by this trial run, Pitt authorised the creation of new routes. Within a month, the service had been extended from London to Norwich, Nottingham, Liverpool and Manchester, and by the end of 1785 to the following major towns and cities in Wales: Leeds, Dover, Portsmouth, Poole, Exeter, Gloucester, Worcester, Holyhead and Carlisle, and then a service to Edinburgh was added the next year. By 1797 there were 42 routes. A mail coach was a stagecoach built to a General Post Office approved design. Mail was held in a box at the rear where the only Royal Mail employee, an armed guard, stood. Passengers were taken at a premium fare. There was seating for 4 passengers inside and more outside with the driver. The guard seat could not be shared. This system began in Britain in 1784. The average speed of coaches was usually 7 to 8 miles per hour in the summer and about 5 in the winter. But with the improvement to the quality of roads, it had risen to 10 miles an hour by the time Queen Victoria came to the throne. With the growth of the network came the coaching inn. The inn served the needs of travellers for food, drink and rest. The attached stables, staffed by hostlers, cared for the horses. As the name suggests, the coaches travelled in stages, and each stage was a distance of about 10 miles. There were therefore a great many of these hostelries around the country, and this of course is why pubs are still often referred to as hostelries. In Cambridge, one astute businessman called Hobson recognised that his best horses were in most demand and they were also the most overworked. He therefore devised a strict rotation system, only allowing customers to rent the next horse in line. This take that one or none ultimatum ensured his reputation as an astute businessman and a city character, and the poet Milton would later immortalise the expression Hobson's choice in 2 commemorative epitaphs. There were many coaching inns in what is now central London. The only remaining one with galleries is the George Inn at Southwark, owned by the National Trust and still run as a pub. The Great North Road has always been one of the most famous highways in the world. Being at the beginning of this route, the town of Barnet had many inns, all vying for business. The Old Mitre Inn is one of the few remaining examples in the town. There are many fine examples of coaching inns throughout this route, and a couple of examples are the Bell Inn at Stilton, near Cambridge. There used to be 2 inns here, the Bell and the Angel. The Bell gained fame for being the original source of Stilton cheese. In 1730, the owner discovered nearby farmers making this distinctive blue cheese and sold it to his travellers. Being on one of the main thoroughfares in the country, the word spread, and today the inn restaurant features dishes made with the famous cheese. The inn housed a host of famous guests over the years, including Dick Turpin, who hid out there for 6 weeks before being discovered. His hideout is now the lounge, and still features the back window from which he jumped to freedom. Then we have the George at Stamford. There are many more fine examples of surviving coaching inns as you travel north. However, with the Industrial Revolution and the coming of rail travel, days of stagecoach travel came to an end. Fortunately, there are still many of these lovely coaching inns around to remind us of those more spacious days, and where you can still get a good meal and a pint of beer.